Hello everyone and welcome to the video on wind turbines. So one of our renewable energy sources that we're talking about here in week one is wind energy. And for wind energy, most of you have probably seen, we're going to be talking about wind turbines that look a lot like this. You might see wind farms out in the Midwest or West Texas, and a lot in Northern Europe that have a lot of wind turbines, and they traditionally look like this. We tend to have 3 blades, although you can have more or less blades. It's possible to produce energy with even 1 blade, but traditionally we see turbines that look like this with 3 blades. Sometimes a lot of people will confuse windmills versus wind turbines, and this is one of my pet peeves. These 3-bladed wind turbines, they are not windmills. Windmills are used to mill something or pump water. So these old school windmills, the things that Don Quixote was tilting after, those are windmills because they were used to mill grain. And sometimes they're still used in Texas or on farms to pump water, but that's the difference between a windmill and a wind turbine. Our turbines are using the air to turn a turbine. So once we're turning a turbine, we're able to produce electricity. So however we're going to have that turbine spin, whether it's from steam or from the air, or in a couple weeks we'll talk about hydro, as soon as we get a turbine to spin, we're able to produce electricity. So a lot of the wind turbines that we might see in the US are going to be these large scale types, but that's not the only type of wind turbine out there. There are some that are smaller for residential systems. So we might have seen, I'm going to show you a picture of this. This is a company in Denmark that has residential size systems. 1 turbine will power a typical home. You might see smaller ones like this. I've seen a lot of schools might install little wind turbines to learn on. But there's also some really goofy shaped ones like this. So this is a company in Denmark, and you can see compared to the house, it's quite a bit taller than the house, but it's not so big. Here is the nacelle where all the gearbox and everything in, and you can see compared to a person how big it is. But these wind turbines are about 25 meters high, so not as big as some of the larger scale wind turbines you would see for commercial systems. So this just gives you a sense of how tall some of the largest wind turbines are out there in the world. So compared to the Statue of Liberty is pretty tiny compared to some of these wind turbines. But we can also have what are called vertical axis wind turbines. So we're used to these wind turbines that go this way, that's horizontal axis. A vertical axis is going to spin this way. So you might see some of these they look like kind of like egg beaters. And either way, we're still producing electricity in the same way because we're turning a turbine. So we're using the airflow. It's just a matter of, are we turning on the horizontal axis or the vertical axis? It is possible to do residential wind turbines, or the Philadelphia Stadium is kind of a cool example of going green. The Eagles Stadium in Philadelphia, they have gone LEED gold by putting a lot of solar panels and these goofy wind turbines all over the place. So they have 14 wind turbines circling around the stadium, and also solar panels all around it. So if you drive up 95 in Philadelphia, you'll see all these solar panels and wind turbines. Not new, but new in the US is offshore wind. So there's been talk for the last decade or more about offshore wind in the US, and we're still really not seeing much built yet, but it's something you may want to consider in your proposal if you have coastline. In Northern Europe, Denmark, Germany, there's a lot more offshore wind being installed today. And finally, wind farms. Like I said earlier in the video, we tend to see these places where it's going to be windy, where you have a lot of space. So West Texas, huge for wind. The Midwest, wherever you can be windy, you can install a lot of wind turbines and produce a lot of energy from wind. So when you're working on your project, you really want to think about if you're going to install wind. A, are you a good location for wind? So we want to be someplace where where the wind's gonna blow a lot. And are you thinking about commercial scale, industrial scale, large wind farms? Or are you thinking about more residential, smaller scale, encouraging homeowners to install their own wind turbines on their property? So to think about whether or not your property is a good location for wind, this is the equation for wind power. Now, I don't expect you to memorize this. I don't expect you to really have to do any math with this, but I want you to just look at this real quick. So the power you would get from a wind turbine, it is based on the density of air, which there are small changes with on elevation and temperature. Typically, on the top of a mountain is a really good place to put a wind turbine. You wouldn't want to put it in the valley. You're going to have less airflow. But also the area. The area is the wind-swept area. That is how much that blade is. So the area of a circle, if we're going to talk about a wind turbine, is going to be 1/2 r squared. So what is the radius, or what is the length of one blade? So the bigger the blade, the more area you're going to have. So that's going to be an r squared, so the length of one of the blades squared. But also the velocity, that is the velocity of the wind cubed. So what's really important here, the amount of power you're going to get from your wind turbine is based on the length of one of your blades squared and the velocity cubed. So it's most important to install your wind turbine somewhere where you're going to have the most wind speed. Whether that's at the coast where the wind tends to blow more, where you have the cool air from the air flowing over cool water onto warm air, that's where you tend to have a breeze all the time, or on the top of a mountain, or somewhere where you're going to have a lot of wind, because that velocity is going to cube, so that's really going to be increasing your wind power. So when you're working on your projects this week and you're thinking about, is your location good for wind or not? How much wind do you want to install? It's really important to think about, is your location good for wind? Do you have the resources? Do you have the space? And do you want to think about doing a large scale? Do you have the land for a large scale wind farm? Or are you interested in more smaller scale residential systems? Thanks.